Bilodeau, and we just are here to celebrate her life and bless you and feel your blessings upon each one of us. Thank you for her family and friends who are here, and if you would just bless each of us in our daily life and as we come and go today, we thank you, Lord, for all that you have given to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace.
Thank you all for coming today to honor and remember my mother's life. A couple of little bits of housekeeping before I tell the story. First, my daughter Lee, who just spoke, is legal of us Staggs. She is very married and very pregnant, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that. Mother's here with us. I want to address the pictures. If you look at the pictures from the last 10 years, about 90% of them are at my house where she's sitting in the same chair and has a glass of wine. She was not a lush. That's the same glass of wine she used for 20 years. We just got it out. It looks like there's many of those photographs. In any case, bear with me. I started out with a little eulogy, and I think I ended up with something like a Faulkner novel, so bear with me. Jean Victoria Hitchcock was born to Alan and Vera Hitchcock on August 8, 1925 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She was the youngest of three girls. She had older sisters, Mel and Vera Bell. She always recalled her childhood and her adolescent years with great fondness, despite growing up during the Depression. With the economic collapse, her father lost his job, and they had to give up their nice home. They got by with hard work and some help from family. An uncle offered her dad a job, and that made a huge difference. They managed to get by. Mom's grandparents came to live with them. And this allowed Mom to become very close to her grandparents, especially her grandfather. And as I look back, it's clear when Mom talked about her life that a love of family was fostered early, and it was a salient part of her character, her life, for her entire life. It defined her. She loved family and friends fervently and unconditionally. Her love was uncritical. She forgave faults in others. Perhaps the best example of her unconditional love was the fact that she loved me. I was not always as well behaved as I'm sure you expect I was. That didn't matter to my mom. I mean, we did terrible things. We made homemade bombs and set the picnic table on fire, and it was, I won't go into more examples of my year, but she adored me. I was hers, and so no matter how bad I was, she loved me. I could have been Adolf Hitler or an axe murderer, and she would still love me. World War II came when Mom was about 16 years old, and it didn't really affect her immediate family since there were only girls, and her father was too old to serve. Her brothers-in-law were in the military, but fortunately came through the war okay, so Mom really wasn't touched by the tragedy that visited so many families. With the coming of the war, jobs came back, times got better, her father got a better job, and things picked up. After high school, she went to New York City, worked as a secretary. She stayed for about a year before returning to Minneapolis. During this time, she broke a few hearts and an engagement or two. After she came back home, a friend got her a blind date with a college boy who had been a fighter pilot during the war. His name was James William Bilodeau. Sparks flew. Both of my parents knew from the beginning that they met the love of their life. They married on September 2nd, 1948, and their love only grew stronger with the passage of time. If you pay attention to these pictures we've been showing, you can see the love in their faces, the touch of their hands. They were always next to each other. They needed to be near each other. When Dad died in 2016, they'd been married for 68 years. Wow. After a couple of years in Minneapolis, where Dad worked for some sort of farm supply company, which wasn't a good fit since he was an aeronautical engineer, they got a job offer from Chance Vaught, an aircraft company in Texas. They moved to Dallas, and later to Arlington after I was born, and David came 2 years later. My memories of those early years are all good. It was a happy home. My parents adored each other. They adored us. It was as if we were growing up on the TV show Leave It to Beaver. Dad went to work. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad had a good job, and we weren't rich, but we wanted for nothing, and it was truly idyllic. It was a fabulous time. In the early 60s, we moved to Houston when Dad took a job at NASA. Mom and Dad built a dream house in a small town near the Space Center. It was a perfect place to grow up. Friendswood, Texas was a typical small town. Mom was in the PTA, Dad ran for the school board, David and I were in the Boy Scouts. We got to meet astronauts, we got to go to 4th of July parades. There was little crime and no drugs. It was like a time capsule still in the 50s. It was perfect. No matter what activity we chose, Mom was always there for us. She was a den mother when we were in Cub Scouts. She was supportive of us in so many ways. If we were in a performance or in some kind of athletic event, she was there. I'd say things were perfect, but I do have to admit that it was during this time I became aware that Mother had a darker side. She's the most stubborn human being I've ever met in my entire life. And that carried over her whole life. If I needed her to do something, like when it came time to wear oxygen, she wasn't going to do it. I said, well, you might die. I don't care. So you plant a little seed and you leave it alone, and after about 2 weeks, it becomes her idea, and then it's okay. So that was one of the things that I began to notice as I came out of my childhood. The other thing that stood out from those years is I realized she was a housekeeping Nazi. Woe be unto he who tracked dirt or leaves into her home. These transgressions were met with immediate and severe retribution. And not to focus on the negative, but when she married, she wasn't a very accomplished cook. Her culinary skills were fairly undeveloped. And that sounds sexist to assume that the woman's role is to prepare all the meals, especially by today's standards. But Dad had a full-time job and no cooking skills at all. So it was Mom's cooking or death by slow starvation. And I may be exaggerating this, but Mom had had a number of favorite dishes, and she prepared those 7 or 8 things very well. But wasn't a lot of variety. And I remember at one point she added something to her repertoire. She came up with this casserole that's got ground round in a casserole dish, cream of mushroom soup on top, then tater tots, then she would bake it. And it was absolutely delicious the first 10 or 12,000 times she served it. You know, you can't get too much of a good thing. And suffice it to say, David and I will probably go to our graves without ever feeling a great urge to partake of tater tot casserole. Anyway, in this wholesome, loving environment, David and I thrived, and in the blink of an eye, we were grown, graduated from college, married, and moved away. Mom and Dad moved to Georgia when they retired, and they built their second dream house. Mom settled in nicely. She continued to maintain a spotless house. She always took care to look good, dress well. Dad drove her to the beauty shop every single week for over 20 years, and he would sit there the whole time and wait on her. Mom had moved away from some friends, but she stayed in touch with them. She made new friends. She never met a stranger. When we would go out to dinner, which was usually about once a week, usually on Fridays, we'd take Mom and Dad with us. It didn't matter where we went. It was like going out with a celebrity. Mother knew every server at every restaurant, and it got to where it interfered with your ability to have a meal. But she'd sit there and visit the whole meal, and I'm amazed that people didn't get fired, but it was very interesting to see how she interacted with them. She knew every detail about their lives. She just loved them. She loves all people, her family, her friends, and she invested of herself in every relationship. When she learned to use a computer, it was just another tool for contacting people. Then she reconnected with a host of family and friends who lived elsewhere. She invested in love, and she had a genuine interest in every relationship, and I think this was her most remarkable quality. She offered friendship immediately and freely to everyone. And it was only retracted with reluctance, and usually only after someone had hurt or disappointed her over and over. And even then, she would grieve for the lost relationship and try to see what she could have done to make it different. She had a sweetness and a naivete about her that was nice to see. After Dad died, she quit driving very much, and I would take her to the grocery store or the pharmacy. That was eye-opening. She would visit every single person that worked in Publix, every single one of the staff in the pharmacy, half of the customers, and I quickly learned that I needed to schedule about a half a day for a trip to the grocery store. And I recall when we would go places when Mom and Dad were both able to do with us, we'd go to the Walmart, go wherever, and Dad was sitting on a bench by the front door. I get it now. It was a revelation to me that someone would take so much joy from a simple trip to the grocery store. Sadly, all good things come to an end. Dad got sick and had to go to the nursing home. Living alone was hard on Mom. I took her to see Dad several times a week, and I was anxious about how Mom was going to cope when Dad finally died. When he did die, I braced for the worst, but she surprised me. I'd always thought Dad was the stronger of the two, but I was wrong. When he got sick, Mom took over paying the bills. She started driving again, and she really hadn't driven since they moved to Georgia because Dad drove her everywhere. She was strong. She adapted. Her love for Dad and her need to care for him gave her strength to cope with things and change to meet her new environmental challenges and do the things I wasn't sure she could do. When he died, she was able to go on. She didn't retreat from life. Her love for family and for all of her extended family here at Cumberland helped her survive. Mom was able to make tough decisions. She knew when it was time to stop living alone. She knew when she had to stop driving. She was able to give up the house that she and Dad had built and loved so much. She moved into a retirement apartment in Augusta. She made even more friends. Sadly, that was not to be, as that complex burned just a few months after she moved in. She was truly devastated by having to give that up and give up her new friends and her newfound happiness. David and I looked around and we found Cumberland Village through some online sources. We brought her here for a visit and suggested that she consider moving here. And Mom was initially negative about moving so far away from us. Reluctantly, and here I mean with a gun to her head, she agreed to give it a try. She'd been so happy at the other place that I feared for the worst, but again she surprised and delighted us. Her capacity for love and her need to make friends saved the day. And within a few weeks, you had all welcomed her into your lives and into your hearts. She fell in love with it here. She spent many hours when we would be together for my visits, detailing your lives, your loves, your triumphs, your tragedies, your illnesses, everything she knew about you. She'd share that with me as we have a meal. Mother had another love here at Cumberland. She was a hardcore bingo player. Every time I visited with her, she would tell me about the previous week's bingo games. And I started listening to her. Well, I said, how many games did you win? 3. How many people were there? 14. And I started doing the math. It's like, that doesn't add up with the laws of chance. And I couldn't figure any way that she could cheat. So I figured she must just be lucky. For the first few months, when we were out for lunch, she'd say, well, go by the bank and get me some change. Because you had to pay, I don't know, a dime or nickel per card or something. So she had to have change. So I did that. And after a while, she quit asking me. So finally I said, Mom, do you need me to stop and get you some change? No, I'm a little ahead. So after she died, Ellen and I were in her apartment moving furniture. We got to this dresser. We almost died trying to pick it up. And I thought, what in the world? So we'll empty the drawers. We'll take the drawers out. And I started doing that. They're all full of clothes. They didn't weigh anything. Finally got to the top drawer, which was only this big. That sucker weighs about 1,000 pounds and is filled with bags and bags of coins. There must have been $100 or $200 in there. So I really want to apologize and hope she didn't cause any of you any financial hardship. And I would offer the thought that you better be grateful that you weren't playing poker with her. Anyway, this is just one example of the things that she loved about being here with you. She loved all of you. She loved the residents. She loved the staff. She was incredibly happy here. And I want you to know how grateful we all are to you all here at Cumberland for that. You were family to my mother. You helped make the last years of her life happy and fulfilled instead of them just being marking time. Lastly, I want to thank you for your thoughts, your prayers, your cards, your kind words of love, and your best wishes when Mom got sick. Her passing was quick. It was merciful and peaceful. She went from playing bingo and eating meals with you to being in heaven in just 3 weeks. And I'm really grateful that she did not have to suffer through a long, slow decline, or worse, have some debilitating illness that would have forced us to move her. And I think more than I feared Mom's death, I feared ever having to talk to her about moving somewhere else. And that didn't come to pass, thank goodness. So we're sad, but we realize how much we've been blessed. Mom is with Dad again, so things are as they should be. She can breathe without oxygen. She's winning at bingo. She was the best mother anyone could have ever hoped for. And I want you to join me in thanking God for letting us share our lives with Jean Victoria Hitchcock Bilodeau. She was not famous. She was not wealthy. She was not the President of the United States. She was not the CEO of a major company. She was not the Queen of England. No, she was somebody much, much more important. She was my mother.
Have your programs ready. We'll have a song in a moment. And this is the point where I have to stop and change glasses because if I'm going to say anything, I have to be able to read that. So I know you're out there somewhere. I can see you. Okay. I want you to know as I start that Paul and I did not compare notes on what we were going to say. And I'm glad we didn't, because it gives me a little ability to say I'll add a little bit of color to a couple of his stories, and then I'll tack on my own. In fact, as I wrote my notes, and I decided I'd talk about some of my earliest memories of Mom when we moved to Friendswood. I have just fragmented memories of Arlington, and then we get to Friendswood into the dream home, and suddenly I start picking up in terms of things that I can recall. One of those was, in fact, the weekly trip to the hairdresser. Every Friday, like clockwork, she drove to I-45 and Broadway to a little shop that had been there 1,000 years, and I was probably still there, to have her hair done and come back all dolled up on the weekend. And of course, on the way back, she would stop at Albion Mall, where there was a Foley's. And she was there so often that the staff of Foley's thought she worked there. And they would ask her, where's such and such? And she would know. Off she would go. Well, the Foley story has an interesting ending for us. I learned something from my father because of my mother's trips to Foley's, and that was how not to pay the bills. Dad would sit in his easy chair, drag out the card table, and he would be writing out the checks once a month, you know, when he could still do that. He'd write out the checks, muttering under his breath, just, how am I going to pay for this, et cetera, et cetera. Gene, what is this? And I just remember that, and I realized early on into my marriage, I started off my marriage that way. It's like, no, that's no way to do it. So I was so happy when online bill pay came. So all I can do is look at my phone and say, I don't have to swear under my breath like Dad did because of my wife. Well, one thing about Mom, she was very self-righteous. She could be extremely self-righteous and just indignant about certain things. And she was very prim and proper. So, and I don't know exactly how old I was, but I walked into the kitchen of the Friendswood house. I was probably 8 or 9. She was in the kitchen preparing something, and she dropped, I don't know, an appliance or something. And I know what she said. What she claimed she meant to say was, oh, shoot. Mom, that is not what you said. Yes, I did. I said, oh, shoot. No, I distinctly heard you say something else. And she was adamant. I think if I told that story later, she never would admit she had said a 4-letter word. Well, on that point, so Mom and Dad would go out Saturdays when they could to this swanky, private little club called Mike's Rendezvous, kind of down on the road near Dickinson. And years later, we got to go there. It was a nice place, had lovely food and a lovely bar, and etc. And of course, they knew everybody there. And my perspective on the tater tot casserole was that it was good the first 99 times you had it. And then it began to wear on you. So a couple of things. She tried to make it up. Every now and then, she would leave pot pie. I hate pot pie. But she left me Jiffy Pop, and that kind of made up for the tater tot casserole, not quite so much. Well, in 1979 came a big flood in Friendswood, and when Mom and Dad came home from their vacation in Brainerd, Minnesota, shout out to the cousins on Facebook, by the way, they said, where's our recipe? Mom said, where's the recipe box? I went, recipe box, I have no idea, where was it? It was in a cabinet in the kitchen, so we opened it up and opened this little metal box, and it was a big pile of goo. Well, that was about like the tater tot casserole, just a big pile of goo. So I remember thinking how excited I was that must mean that the tater tot casserole recipe is lost to the ages. But then I found out how simple it was to make, and I just gave up. Anyway, that was it. I couldn't handle it anymore. Just the thought of tater tot casserole to this day makes me kind of want to just retch. Well, another thing about Mom being righteously indignant is Dad's driving. So, you know, if you've taken driver's ed and an official driver's ed car, you'll notice there's a lot of times there's a separate brake pedal on the instructor's side, on the right side, the passenger side. Well, in our car, it wasn't a separate brake pedal, but there was a worn spot on the carpet where her foot would just stomp, and she would stomp on the brake, and an indentation, literally an indentation in the dashboard where it was, Jim, Jim, and she would just do that indignant tone, complaining about whatever it was he wasn't about to hit. Jim, the hand would go out, the foot would go down, it's like, Mom, relax, it's going to be okay, and we did survive, I'm glad to know. On that point, I'm going to pause for a moment. If you pull out your bulletins, I would like us to sing 2 verses of this hymn, and then I will explain myself. If you please. You've got a little introduction, and then we can sing. You probably all know it. Maybe and I'll try to lead you along. Go ahead.
I
that hymn popped in my head, and it's one of my all-time favorite hymns. The tune, the words, if you read those words, they're very moving, very comforting when you think about life, and you think about death, and you think about God and His love for all of us. And I thought, and this was just earlier this week, I said, why is this one of my favorite hymns? And I had an epiphany. Those of you who are old enough to remember, and I'm looking at the dates, a show that was put out by the Lutheran Church of America called Davy and Goliath. It aired from 1960 to 1965, and then on and off, 67, 71, 72, etc. Well, every Sunday, before we would take off for church at Webster Presbyterian, there I was, plopped in front of the television, all dressed up, ready to go, and I was watching the show. And Davy was the kid, and Goliath was the dog. The show was made in claymation. You remember the old Raggy Girl jerky claymation before they got computer graphics? They would literally mold the thing one move at a time. And the opening theme for that show was The Mighty Fortress. And Mom was the only person on the planet who called me Davy. And I think that's where she got it. And I just this week realized there was a connection between her name for me and that hymn and the show that she always found me watching when she came out. And Davy, come on, it's time to go to church. She calls me Davy, Paul calls me Dave, and everybody else, you better call me David or I will correct you. All right, moving right along. Paul mentioned something about her PC, and I have to sheepishly admit, when I worked for Radio Shack, Mom decided she wanted a PC and a printer so she could work up a family history. And so she came up and she bought one through my store, and she went home and started writing the entire family history, printed the whole thing out on this flow dot matrix printer, made these big, thick notebooks of the Bilodeau and Hitchcock and Templeton and Peterson family history, all back generations and generations. And I forgot what I was going to say. So one day I called her and said, you need to buy a modem. What's that? And I explained what it was, a little device you hook up to your telephone line so you can transmit computer signals. And I said, there's this thing called CompuServe. And I said, we can send electronic messages for free. No more long-distance phone calling. This was in 1981. So Mom and I started electronic messaging back in 1981, and somewhere, I don't know, I haven't seen this, I haven't been looking, but somewhere up here, if you look, you'll see a split screen image of me on the top, I think it is, and Mom on the bottom, and we are Skyping in October of this year, of last year, October 13th, we had our last Skype. So it started off as just a little text message, a couple of lines, turned into full-fledged email and pictures and attachments and live streaming assistance when she couldn't get her computer to work. Paul did most of that, and Skype. And so I captured the screen image, didn't think much about it at the time, but it's very meaningful to realize that over a course of 37 years, she stayed with it, she learned the technology, she got good at it, and we helped her the best we could. And I was always very impressed by that. My colleagues, and I'm a computer geek, and at work I work with computer people, and they all cannot believe that my 93-year-old mother could turn on a computer, much less open up Skype and have a communication. She never did learn where to look. She's always looking at the screen and the camera's over here. It's like, Mom, look at the camera. And then Dad would wander into the background when he was alive, and he would, hi Dave, and he'd go sit down and flop on the couch, have a little nap while she talked. And then he would wake, oh, it's time to go, okay, see you Dave, and so off he would go. Well, Mom and Dad moved to Georgia in 92, I believe it was? Yeah, 92. So that's 26 years. And we communicated that way the entire time. But I also got into a habit of calling. Long distance kind of went away. Didn't have to pay, it was free. So that was nice, helped both of us, because if they called me or I called them, it didn't have to cost an arm and a leg. And so for every weekend for 26 years, I would call And whomever would answer the phone, I would talk first to them, and then the other parent would get on the phone and we would chit-chat. Well, as Dad got older, he would answer the phone, and I came to learn he was sitting at the kitchen table, and the phone was right behind him. He was deaf as he could be, but he could hear the phone ring. So we'd turn around, hey Dave, and we'd have our little chat, and then he would hand the phone to Mom, and she would proceed to tell me all the dumb things Dad had done all week long. So that was always exciting. And again, that morphed into Skype and all of those sorts of things. So we had it was a long distance relationship, a very close one. We came to visit whenever we could. They visited us, and it was a good life, as Paul said. We wanted for nothing. We knew that our mother loved us unconditionally. And as we got to the end of her life, and I came over here a few days before she died, I was trying to think, how am I going to communicate with my mother? I know she's going to have difficulty. Paul had warned me that it was going to be tough. And it was. But, I don't know, maybe she died on Wednesday. I think Sunday night, maybe Monday morning. I don't really remember. I pulled out my cell phone, and I carry my music on my phone. Whoever thought that would be possible. And I have a suite of Christmas songs that I love. It's called Many Moods of Christmas. It's 4 15-minute movements, choir and orchestra. Interestingly, it was recorded by the Atlanta Symphony in the mid-'80s. So it's kind of hometown Georgia stuff. And I pulled that out, and I put on the Many Moods of Christmas, and just put it on Mom's pillow. She wasn't able to talk at that point, but I sat there just with my eyes closed and saying a prayer. And I looked up, opened my eyes, and there she was, laying back with her eyes closed, mouthing the words to one of the Christmas songs. That's all she could do. And I just thought, I just lost it. Because there she was, and something resonated in her utter joy of a Christmas tune that she had known all her life, right at the end of her life. In a minute, her granddaughter Taylor is going to read from Psalms, and that was the last Bible verse that Mom heard before she died. She'll be reading in a moment. So there's a connection over this. Mom was always in our corner, even when we were wrong. In her eyes, we were without fault. Parents, that sometimes can be a disservice to your children. Every now and then, you just need to tell your kids off. And I just don't remember. She told Paul off all the time because he was, the wicked one doing all these crazy things. If you don't believe that, just ask me. But she rarely ever had to tell me off. I had one feud with her one time, and after 2 days, we kissed and made up and all. She was upset because I kept waking her up when I came in from ambulance runs in the middle of the night when I was at home, living at home. She didn't like the fact that she had to sit up waiting for me to come back. It's like, why? I'm on an ambulance run. I know what I'm doing. I'm with other people. I just can't sleep when you're not here and you're home. So anyway, she was just like that. She was my first best friend. Bar none, she was the first friend I ever had. Paul and Dad were there, but Mom was just right there, and we had a great relationship. She called me Daddy, and that endeared her to me forever. And before I finish, I have a little reading that I added just yesterday because one of our cousins who couldn't be here today posted this in honor of one of her late family members, and it was so touching. I want to try to read it to you in just a moment. I'm going to share it with you. But I want to take a second, and this is where I told my wife and my brother I was going to lose it. I'll try not to, but I want to take a moment and acknowledge the Georgia Bilodeau family. The grandchildren, the spouses, the great-grandbaby, all of the joy that you brought to Grandma, to Mom, and Paul and Jan. You spent 26 years of your life, in some cases, on hold for Mom and Dad. You took care of them. You took them wherever they needed to go. And Paul, you did yeoman's work for our mother for the entire time that I will never be able to express in words my love and my gratitude to you for the sacrifices that you made on our parents' behalf. And so I'm happy to know that you and Jan are going to travel in 2 weeks. Just so you know, in 2 weeks we've got a thing in Dallas, and Jan and Paul are coming to my house. So we're going to be together in a couple of weeks, and then they're going to go off and travel to, I don't know, Alaska and Timbuktu and other places like that. So it's really something. You all go and travel and enjoy and have a good time with your kids and your grandkids, just like we do. And There's life out there. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. In closing, I'm going to read this. It's called, I Heard Your Voice in the Wind Today. The author is unknown. I heard your voice in the wind today, and I turned to see your face. The warmth of the wind caressed me as I stood silently in place. I felt your touch in the sun today as its warmth filled the sky. I closed my eyes for your embrace, and my spirit soared high. I saw your eyes in the window pane as I watched the falling rain. It seemed as each raindrop fell, it quietly said your name. I held you close in my heart today. It made me feel complete. You may have died, but you are not gone. You will always be a part of me. As long as the sun shines, the wind blows, the rain falls, you will live on inside of me forever. For that is all my heart knows.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Yeah, like you, Paul, I meant to just jot a couple of notes. But then when I got down to writing about my Aunt Jean, I went a little long, so I apologize in advance, but hopefully it's okay and you'll indulge me in my memories. My name is Lisa Jean Jensen. Jean is my aunt and my godmother. My parents agreed that I should carry her name in my name. She's my mother's sister, my mom's lifelong best friend, in the way that only family members can be best friends. It's a different kind of best friendship. They didn't live near one another, so it wasn't an everyday thing, but it was ever present. It was rooted in what, by all accounts, must have been a delightful childhood. It was deep and enduring, that special connection that only siblings can know. And my connection to Aunt Jean is inextricably tied, built on top of their relationship with one another. When my mom told me stories of her younger life, Aunt Jean was in most of them. It was never spoken, but I think those childhood memories were a reference point for how my mom wanted to raise her own daughter. When my mom first told me Aunt Jean was my godmother, I was 5 or 6 years old. I had no idea what that meant or even why it was important. Mom explained that a godmother was someone who would be there for me if I needed her. She told me that if anything ever happened to both her and Dad, that I would go live with Aunt Jean. That she would love every little bit of me, just like they did. That's what a godmother would do. It's a big thing to say to a little girl, and it made an impression on me. And so I knew at a young age the ultimate importance of Aunt Jean. Throughout my life, my godmother was a source of special surprises. When I was in elementary school, she made me dresses by the dozens, literally, hand-sewn, beautifully appointed, all with that special label, handmade by Jean, sewn inside. The dresses came to us in big boxes, and I remember how exciting it was to get these packages in the mail. And with each package, there was also a letter filled with little tidbits of fun, goofy jokes, and unconditional love. She didn't know me, really, except through my mom, but she loved me, and that made perfect sense. For some reason, I started calling her Annie Green Jeans. I really have no idea where that came from, but there was a comfortable silliness between us that I liked really a lot. Special packages have continued to come to me from my godmother all these years. When I was 16, I got a beautiful sapphire ring. I passed that ring to my own daughter last year on her 16th birthday. I got a wine glass a year for a long time when I was in my 20s. That collection has a privileged space on a shelf in the kitchen. I got a beautiful decanter and candle holders, and we exchanged Christmas gifts. And her boxes always had ornaments attached, most of which hang on my tree every year. Little godmother treasures, little godmother reminders. My family drove from Chicago to Houston for an extended visit with the Bilodeau clan in the late 1960s. It was a big trip for us at the time, and that trip made memories that would last a lifetime. For some reason, I slept in the bedroom with Aunt Jean and Uncle Jim. I don't know why I wasn't with my own parents, but I do know that it wasn't strange or awkward to be with my aunt and uncle. Aunt Jean, as usual, made it fun and easy. During this visit, we often split up by gender. The dads and the boys went off and did their guy stuff, while Mom, Aunt Jean, and I were our own little trio. We played cards and laughed. We shopped and laughed. We cooked and giggled and laughed. And there was deep sister-to-sister sharing that I was there for. It was as if I was an honorary Hitchcock sister. They talked about everything, and the urgency of it made an impression on me. They poured their hearts out to one another like they'd been saving it all up. It was different than how they talked with their husbands. It was their own place. It was real, and it was nice. My mom and my Aunt Jean, although different in many ways, were alike in so many others. They were both quick wits, fun-loving, and willing to create mischief. They were both adoring mothers to their children. They both had the ability to be deeply empathetic, but also no nonsense. They were active and expressive and laughed out loud a lot. And they were both beautiful women in their own ways. My mother passed in 2004, and to be honest, I had some of my most meaningful conversations with Aunt Jean after that. We talked by phone a number of times, hundreds of miles apart, but with easy intimacy. She understood instinctively that I wanted, that I needed, to feel again that connection with my own mother by talking with her. I think she needed it too. Those conversations meant the world to me, and I'm so grateful that we had them. Aunt Jean and I weren't together much, but I didn't have to earn her love. She just gave it. She said nothing but positive and kind things to me whenever she spoke. She gifted me a lifetime of unconditional love. She's my godmother. And my name is Lisa Jean.
Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way you always use. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air or solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed, at the little jokes we always enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effort, without the ghost of a shadow in it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolute, unbroken continuity. What is death but a negligible accident? Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. Nothing is past, nothing is lost. One brief moment, and all will be as it was before. How we shall laugh at the trouble of parting when we meet again.
Well, thank you all again for coming and sharing these memories with us. And thank you all, especially again, family, friends, the Cumberland family, for being there for Mom. She was a special lady, and this day has been special for us, so thank you. Those of you who wish, we'd love to have any and all of you come by our house for a meal and some visiting afterwards, so we hope you can do that. We'll now close with the Lord's Prayer.
Amen.